Okay, so the last phase is phase 5, and this is complications. So in this phase, it looks like the RN received the results of the abdominal CT scan, which revealed that the patient did have a 6 millimeter right ureter kidney stone. The patient is now experiencing respiratory distress. And it was like, what do you think would happen in the patient's case? Please identify the missed items by the nurse in this phase. And then it says, what is the patient's code status? So the patient's code status is do not resuscitate. So in this phase, I identified some things. And the patient, what I think happened is the patient probably took Tylenol 3 with codeine. So the nurse, whenever she was given the pain medication, told the patient, he was like, what are you giving me? What are you giving me? And she kind of, she didn't blow him off, but she was like, it's just a Tylenol 3, it's a real pain medicine. Do you take this at home? And kind of went about it like that, but she never truly told him exactly what it was. And I just know from experience, normally Tylenol 3 is Tylenol 3 with codeine. So she probably gave him Tylenol 3 with codeine. And since she did not ask about allergies and she did not do the rites of administration, she missed a lot of steps here that could have saved the patient's life. So the nurse did not check or administer the drug correctly. She did not ask about allergies. She did not identify the patient whenever she was given the medication, and whenever she was outside of this patient's room, she was discussing the results of this patient's CT scan with another nurse that was not on his case. So that's a violation of HIPAA, and she shouldn't have done that. 1, you shouldn't have done it anyway because it's a violation of HIPAA. 2, it's a violation of HIPAA because you're doing it out in the open in front of the patient's room. And 3, going into the patient's room, she's like, yeah, I know, like pretty much like, oh, this sucks. I forget the exact wording that she said, but she's acted like she doesn't want to do her job. Like, if you don't want to be a nurse, don't be a nurse. I don't feel like being a nurse is for everybody. So if you don't want to take the time to have the professionalism and care for your patients like you should, you don't need to be a nurse. Like, if you're walking into a room and you're saying, oh great, I have to go back in here with this one, like, just don't. She also never followed up with him after he took the medication. She waited 3 hours to follow up with him. That was way too long. She shouldn't have done that. And if she would have given him his call bell whenever she left the room, he maybe, whenever he was not able to breathe, could have pressed that call bell for help, and that would have changed the situation some. So he never had his call bell to call because she refused to give it to him. She also was talking, and she was like, I need some help in here, I need some help in here. But she was very slow to react. So she was like, oh no, what's going on? Can you not breathe? But it was like it took her forever to get there. So I just feel like if it was me in that situation, I would have rushed to get there, and I would have been like, hey, code blue, like, he can't, or not code blue, but he can't breathe, like, I need some help in here, and like caused a scene to get some help. Nobody ever really showed up, which, I understand this is like a fake scenario, so there probably wasn't a whole lot of people to help show up, but I just feel like she reacted slowly. And then she didn't even know his allergies. Like, she said, oh, well, let me check. Oh, he's allergic to codeine? Oh, no. So she kind of, like, told what she did in front of the wife, which she was like, oh, so it kind of made it seem as though she gave him codeine by the comment that she made. She left the crash cart in the room with the patient. The patient's wife was like, oh, he's a do not resuscitate. She's like, oh, he is? Hold on, let me check. So she had to check the chart before she could even help the patient. So all I could go through my mind was, what if he wasn't a do not resuscitate? So if he wasn't, and you're taking the time, like, he's over here not breathing, he doesn't have a pulse, you don't know that he's a do not resuscitate, so you've wasted all of this time that you could have been saving his life by looking at paperwork that you should have already known. So she should have just done some pre-planning and known the patient's stuff just a little bit better. It would have really helped her, I feel like. Also, whenever she left the room, I just feel like it was very unprofessional the way she did it. Like, she could have at least, whenever he was not breathing, like at first whenever she walked in and he was still conscious and he was like, no, I can't breathe, she didn't check his airway for patency. She didn't check to see if there's any obstruction. She didn't check anything. She was like, oh, okay, well, here, let me see. Like, her reaction time was not there. It should have been there, and it just wasn't. So those were just some things that I found wrong with this situation, and the way the whole execution of the whole video for that scene was just a little bit off to me. She did, check his pulse, but she checked his carotid artery instead, and that was the only one she checked. So all that went through my mind was, if if it was an allergic reaction and his throat was swelling, could you still feel a pulse in his throat? I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm not remembering, maybe I haven't learned that yet, but I just feel like I would have checked his pulse somewhere else to verify that he did not have a pulse before I stopped and said, oh, he doesn't have a pulse. I would have at least checked his radial pulse or something else to confirm that he didn't have a pulse before I made his announcement, that, oh, no, he doesn't have a pulse. So that's just a couple things that I would have changed about it and a couple errors that I saw wrong.